That being said, though, the Eagles are very much needing defense this year. NFL.com says that defensive line, corner, and edge are all in need. Everything but secondary. And trust me, I know they do not need secondaries anymore. That being said, however, I think there's a circumstance where they can go for a safety. If Starks from Georgia can fall, I can see the Eagles trading up to go get him. Starks is not going to fall to 32, but if he falls outside of the top 10, I would not be shocked if Howie Grossman goes and gets that guy. If Starks falls to maybe 12 or 15, I would expect a call from the Eagles to go get Starks. If that is not the case, if Starks does end up being a top 10 pick, I really like Notre Dame, Xavier Watts, I think is who his name is.
That's right.
Pro Football Focus has him at the big board for 39. If he is there at 32, I can see them going to get him. He is another safety, but I think those are the only two guys that can possibly go to Philly if Philly selects a safety.
Interesting. And something, I think this was one of your best takes of the entire video. I love Malachi Starks. Everything about him as a prospect. I want him to go to Detroit solely because he's so freaking good. He's going to be a Pro Bowler. I know it. I feel it in my bones. And I also feel somehow that Malachi Starks will fall out of the top 15 because his 40 was a little slow, similar to how Brian Branch of Alabama 2 years ago was a little slow in the 40, and he fell outside of the first round and was selected by Detroit and is now a Pro Bowler. He's a freaking stud. I feel the same way about Malachi Starks. So I do think that since Philly possesses 4 fifth-round picks due to comp picks and due to trades, I think Howie Roseman is going to finesse a deal here. They have traded up in the first round in the last 2 drafts to get a defensive lineman. I think that if Starks is there at like 18, 19, watch out because Philadelphia is making the move. However, if it's not Starks, I think that you have to replace Milton Williams, the defensive interior guy. He was such a wrecker in the Super Bowl and throughout the season that if you don't replace him, Williams went to a huge deal to New England. If you don't replace him, you're in trouble, and I don't think they've adequately done that yet. So I think that Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss is a name to remember for Fly Eagles Fly country here. He's a likely selection, and I also do think that they'll have to trade up for him as well. But I think they will. They have the capital to do so. They're not going to end the draft with 4 fifth-round picks. It won't happen. Howie Roseman will use them. There's no other reason to stockpile them like that. So that's my thoughts on the Philadelphia.
Howie Grossman will trade some of those picks for sure. I don't think he's going to make a trade to go get Walter Nolan, though. I think Mel Kiper has Walter Nolan actually going to Philadelphia at pick 32. I think if Philadelphia uses the trade, they're going to go get Starks. NFL.com says that they're going to go get Starks at 24. And again, Mel Kiper has them picking Walter Nolan at 32. I think if they want Starks, they got to go get him. But if they want Nolan or any other defensive tackle, I think they can stay comfortably right at 32. And I think they can get the best defensive tackle available at that time.
Gotcha. Okay, I like that analysis. And I do see Nolan going at 32, almost as a consensus, really. You look at the mock drafts, he's a very popular pick for Philly. So I agree if they do decide to wait, but I'm almost certain they will trade up, whether it's for Nolan or whether it's for Starks. But moving on to another bitter rival of the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys. I'll go ahead and start on this one. I think the Cowboys need playmakers. I think they need someone dynamic on that offense besides CeeDee Lamb because Dak Prescott, as many Cowboys fans don't like him, I think that he's extremely accurate and extremely solid. And he needs someone else to throw to. Jake Ferguson caught 0 touchdowns last year. And Brandon Cooks is gone. Gallup is gone. Who is the wide receiver 2 in Dallas? They have not addressed it yet. And once again, who is the running back in Dallas? Do they have any playmakers? I think that picking at 12, they're in a unique spot because wide receiver isn't really a strong class this year. So I don't want them to, I don't think they should pick a wide receiver at 12. I think that they should go tight end or running back. And I think that if the Bears don't scoop up Genty, then they should go Genty. But if they can't go Genty, Amari and Hampton from South Carolina is a stud. Or is it North Carolina? I'm sorry. I believe it's North Carolina. But Amari and Hampton,
North Carolina.
Yeah. Amari and Hampton is a stud. 3 down back, 5'11" in the 220s. He would be exactly the dynamic guy they need in the backfield to help balance that offense out. But if they don't go Hampton, I believe there's a chance they also go Tyler Warren from Penn State. 100 plus receptions last year, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. Kid's a menace, and they need someone for Dak Prescott to check it down to when CeeDee Lamb is quadruple covered because they don't have another wide receiver.
For me, you can bookmark this. With the number 12 pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Omari and Hampton, running back, North Carolina. You can bookmark it. This is my most confident pick. ESPN and NFL both select Hampton going to Dallas. And it's not, but there's a reason that both of them agree on this. Look at who their new head coach is, Brian Schottenheimer. Brian Schottenheimer has always been a run-heavy team. NFL.com calls him a ball control play caller that focuses on the run game. And I think he's going to be the best running back available for guys that is not named Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty is not going to fall to 12. I would honestly be shocked if he falls to 10 with Chicago still. But if he does, Chicago's getting him at 10. The only way the Dallas Cowboys do not select Omari and Hampton is if they trade up in front of Chicago to go get Genty.
And I also
That's my most
think that,
confident take to this week.
And I appreciate the confidence. I think that it's fairly likely that they take Hampton. He's not my most confident pick today, but I do think that Hampton's fairly likely. I just don't think Dallas has the capital to trade up, so I don't think they're going to get Genty personally. But I do think that Hampton would be it's a slam dunk perfect fit. If Dallas doesn't make the move, Jerry Jones is completely washed, if he's not already. But moving on to the Washington Commanders. This one stings. I don't want to talk about the Commanders anymore.
I've been a big fan of what the Commanders have done this offseason. We talked about it in our first episode. I think they need to go get Jaden Daniels whatever he needs. They've done that a lot on offense, and now I think it's time for them to go to defense. Edge and corner tend to be the go-to for Washington. I think edge is the bigger need. My pick, and I'm not as confident in this pick as I am Dallas, but my pick is Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. I think he's going to be in the mix. I think James Pierce from Tennessee in the mix. I think both guys are going to be names that I would focus on and research a little bit more if I'm a Commanders fan. I'm not sure if both those guys are going to fall. I think at least one of them will, but if both of them are taken, another name that I'm looking for with the Commanders is Mikael Williams from Georgia, or even Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. But I think edge is absolutely going to be the way that the Commanders go. Maybe they don't, but I think that's the way they need to go at least.
Interesting. I agree with you on everything you just said, especially with edge being the bigger need, because the Commanders had a horrific defensive line last year. If they do not address that, they will not remain competitive. They're like the anti-Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles stocked up on pass rushers. The Commanders have no pass rushers, and they lost some of their best pass rushers in free agency this year. So they need to make a move in the draft, and I think in the first round. However, this is another situation where the Packers are kind of in. The Packers need to select a corner to remain competitive with all those wide receivers. I think the Commanders are also in that spot where an aging Marshawn Lattimore is not going to be your outside corner. He just won't. So you need someone to start outside so you can move Mike Sainstro back into the slot where he belongs. And so then you can shore up the cornerbacks. And I think that the guy that you mentioned, Maxwell Harrison, he is the best fit. 6'1". He's an outside corner. He would do a great job in that Commanders defense, and he's a total stud. And I think that if he's there, they'll take him. However, edge is a big need, like you said, like we agree. But at 29, it's going to be difficult to find a true difference maker at edge. A lot of them will have gone. The Lions need an edge, and they pick right before them. So unless they trade up and get somebody, there's not going to be a whole lot available. But one guy that I do think could be available, they could select, would be Donovan Ezekaraku. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but Donovan E. He is a edge that I think will be available and is talented enough. It's a very deep edge rushing class, so I do think the Commanders could get some value out of him at 29.
To the Commanders fans, I want to give one name of warning. And to the Eagles fans, I want to give one name of mockery. And that is NFL's take of Landon Jackson. I don't know how trustworthy the Commanders GM is to make good decisions, but NFL.com has Washington selecting Landon Jackson, an edge from Arkansas. And if I am a Commanders fan, I'm going to be mad if that's the pick because he is a late second round pick according to Pro Football Focus. So Commanders fans, if you see the name Landon Jackson on Thursday of draft night, I am worried. Eagles fans, if you see that name, you can start laughing at the Commanders again.
I disagree. I think Landon Jackson's very talented, and I think the Lions could go him.
I think he's talented, but he's not a first-round pick.
Okay. I can see that.
But going on to our final pick, to our final team of the night. And this one, I already know, Zach, you and I are going to be debating this a lot. The New York Football Giants. They have the third pick in the NFL draft. Who do you think they're taking?
To me, I don't think that you can justify taking a quarterback. I know that everyone thinks that they're going either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. First of all, Cam Ward is not going to be available. He won't. He simply is not going to be there at 3. It's not happening. So any Giants fans going to bed at night and dreaming of Cam Ward throwing to Malik Neighbors, stop it. He's not going to be there. He will be the number 1 overall selection to Tennessee. Not to Tennessee, I'm sorry. But you can book it. Oh, it is Tennessee. Yeah, you can book it. To Tennessee, he's going number 1. No doubt in my mind. So that leaves Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter. Those are the other 2 consensus top 5 guys. I think that the Giants will select Abdul Carter. And this is my most confident pick of the night. I know Tyler had his a few picks ago. Abdul Carter. Go ahead and buy the custom jerseys now, New York Giants fans, because Abdul Carter will be rushing the passer opposite of Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Sexy Dexy Lawrence. It will be ferocious. It will be a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks, and it will be a blast. And I think that Abdul Carter is too talented to pass up at 3. I would not rule out the Giants trading back into the first round to get Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, because quarterback is a need. But when you sign Russell Wilson and when you sign Jameis Winston, how are you then going to make the pick of Shedeur Sanders, a guy who's undersized, has a weaker arm than most top 5 quarterbacks have, has good anticipation and good accuracy, but look at the games that he played in college. He never won a single big game against a ranked opponent. Maybe one. I don't know. The stats are scary. And the Giants, I think, can afford to wait one more year on a quarterback instead of reaching heavily on a third-round talent in Shedeur Sanders. In my opinion, Shedeur Sanders is a bust. Honestly, Cam Ward is a bust. Cam Ward in a normal quarterback class would go outside of the top 10, but he is just the best quarterback available, and so many teams need one. I hate this quarterback class. I've never hated a quarterback class more, and I think that the Giants will not go quarterback. They will not make the same mistake like they did selecting Daniel Jones at 6. They won't do it. They can't do it. It would be unfathomable.
So I'll pick up where you left off with the name Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was a bad selection even at the time. On draft night, Giants fans were like, why in the world are you drafting Daniel Jones? That's ridiculous. That's a stupid mistake. And they were right. I don't think Shedeur Sanders is going to be the next Mahomes by any means. I do think Shedeur Sanders is going to be very similar to how Zach Wilson or Sam Darnold turned out prior to this year's Sam Darnold. That being said, I also think Shedeur Sanders is a Giant. I like Abdul Carter. I love Abdul Carter. But I don't think he's going to be there at 3. I think he's going to go to Cleveland. And so if you're the Giants and Carter's off the board, and so is Cam Ward, I think you either need to just get out of the first round, just trade out of the entire first round, or go get Sanders. I think Travis Hunter would be a good pick as well, but they still need a quarterback. Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston could be a good Band-Aid for their quarterback situation if they want to go get Travis Hunter. But I don't think they're going to bring in an aging Russell Wilson and a kind of salvageable Jameis Winston for their long-term future. What I do see them doing is drafting Shedeur Sanders, Sanders playing 0 games in his first year, and learning under Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are 2 veterans with good experience. Jameis Winston, a former number 1 overall pick. Russell Wilson, 2-time NFC champion, 1-time Super Bowl champion. Basically 2-time Super Bowl champion if they decide to run the ball there, but that's a separate podcast. These are good veterans that the Giants brought in. They did not bring them in for them to be the future. I think they're going to draft Sanders. He's going to sit under Russell Wilson for a year and then be the future. Whether that pans out well or not is a whole separate thing. I don't think it'll pan out well, but I do think that's the plan in New York.
Man, if they do that, oh my gosh. I feel so bad for Giants fans. Shedeur Sanders is not good. He is not good.
Like,
you said he's not the next Mahomes. As
someone who watched Shedeur Sanders play when K-State played, I agree. Shedeur Sanders is not good, and honestly, I think Travis Hunter's overrated too.
I agree
think
with
both
you,
those
actually.
Colorado guys are heavily overrated, but I think one of those guys is going to be a New York Giant.
Oh gosh. So
I think the best move for the Giants would be to draft Travis Hunter, deal with a salvageable 1 more year of Russell Wilson, and then go get their quarterback next year. I think that's the best move for the Giants.
But why not?
But I don't think that's what they're going to do.
If Carter's there, why not draft Carter and then just have the
They're
craziest defensive line in football?
I don't think he's going to be there.
Right, but let's say for the sake of the argument that he's there. Let's say that Carter is there.
Okay.
And it goes Ward, Hunter. And you said Sanders in that spot. Or do you think Carter should go over Sanders in that spot to the Giants?
So I think Sanders there because Carter's gone. But like you said, for the sake of that argument, let's say it's Ward and then Hunter. If you're debating between Sanders and Carter, I think they need to take Carter. I still don't know if they will, but I think they need to. Putting Abdul Carter on the same offensive line as Thibodeau, that's nasty work. That is nasty work. That is going to be a very good defensive line.
You picked the worst defensive lineman of the 3.
Maybe Russell Wilson's good enough to deal with that.
Thibodeau's the worst of the 3. It's Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns that are game wreckers at both their positions. Thibodeau and Carter.
That's fair. I forget about Lawrence. I forget he exists.
But Thibodeau. But here's my point. Thibodeau is still good. He's still going to start. He's going to be the premier edge rusher on most NFL teams. So if you had Carter, Thibodeau, Burns, and Lawrence, that rotation, you're basically playing the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl every week once you play the Giants. So I think that it's really tough. It's really hard to be a bad team if you have that defensive rotation in that edge rush. It's really tough. And as much as we want to make fun of the Giants, I love making fun of the Giants. But their coach, Brian Daboll, took a team led by Daniel Jones to the playoffs and won a playoff game in 2022, or was that 3? I don't remember, but it was in this century that a Daniel Jones-led team was taken to a playoff win by Brian Daboll. I think that Russell Wilson can be a rock that takes them to a wild card, potentially, if they draft Abdul Carter. And I think that their then plan would be exactly what the Chiefs did with Mahomes. Trade up for a mid-round quarterback that you can develop under Wilson or Winston and continue to build on what will be a ferocious defense. That is my opinion. Or potentially they get their quarterback in this year's draft and they pull together some capital, maybe package together a player or two, and move up and take Jackson Dart. Because Jackson Dart, I feel like, has a lot of potential, but I do feel like he needs to wait under a quarterback that's good. I think that if he goes to a good situation, he will be better than Sanders and Ward together. Similarly to how Mahomes was better than any of the quarterbacks selected ahead of him, like Watson. We don't even talk about Watson anymore. So I think that potentially selecting Carter and moving up for Dart could be what I would do if I were a Giants GM.